Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's a real pleasure to open our CX Day webinar series. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Shirin Komban, and I have the pleasure of moderating today's first session. Today, we join CX leaders from across the continent to celebrate this special week, a time to reflect on milestones, share discoveries, and most importantly, learn from each other. Um, Over the coming days, we'll bring you 6 sessions covering different perspectives of customer experience, from KPIs and personalization to real journeys from leading global brands. I invite you to check the full session calendar and join us as many as you can, because each of them offer a unique angle on where CX is headed. Now, I'm truly delighted to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Stephane Sanchez from Ipsos. Stephane, you're welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's a real honor to start this week with your expertise.
Thanks a lot. It's really great to be invited to present and to discuss with you today. So yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you very much, really, Stephane. In today's session, you'll be sharing some highlights from Ipsos' latest global report, right? Covering over 65,000 evaluations across multiple sectors and countries, I think. With that, I'd like to hand it over to you to take us through the latest report, because I think there are very important insights within the report. I'm quite excited to listen to that from you, actually. And Stephane, screen is yours. And a fair warning, I may jump in with a question or two along the way if I just can't resist. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Going to share my screen now, and like I said, really happy to be with you today. So I'm going to go through one of our latest global study that we conducted a couple of months ago. It's called the CX Global Insight. Like you mentioned, I will just show you a couple of stats around this study. So we covered more than 65,000 respondents across 18 countries. And as you can see, a very long list of different industries that we have covered. And the idea for this study was really to understand what are some of the latest customer experience trends coming from consumer, what's their perception and what also are their expectations when it comes from brands. So we'll try to unpack that with you today, and happy to answer any of your questions. So maybe let's go through some of the headlines that really, have come out from all this feedback we received from all around the world. So the number one, which for us is really a validation of something that has been discussed across the customer experience community for a very long time. It's around the fact that 70% of customers say that they will choose a brand because they know that the experience will be good, and that's a very important number to acknowledge, because for many years now we have been talking around the linkage between brand and CX, and how this actually how they influence each other, and how a CX practitioner should be looking at forming the right brand promise that is being delivered through the experience to the customers. So this number really help really augment the reality that brands are in right now.
Yeah, this is actually very interesting, Stephane. Can we unpack this a little bit more? I mean, the research shows that 70% of customers choose a brand because they expect the experience will be good. But from a CX leader's perspective, how should we interpret this confidence? I mean, is it more often built on customers, on past experiences, or on external signals like word of mouth and brand reputation? And what does this mean for how CX teams, should act inside their organizations?
Yeah, that's very interesting point you raise here. So like we see, right? So 70% say that their decision of using a brand is directly linked to the fact that they know the experience will be good. And from my perspective as a CX leader, like many of you on the call, so this confidence is really a blend of both the personal history of customers, but also of external signals that they get from the market. And those two really feed each other. So if you think about, if you look at a returning customer, their own past experience will definitely be a strong influencer, right? The memories you have, the interaction you had with that specific brand. And, a single great interaction builds the foundation of trust between the customer and therefore the brand. But when you look at it from a new customer standpoint, that confidence doesn't exist yet because they haven't interacted with the brand. So
Right.
it's all based on external signal here,
Hmm.
which like you probably know, social media, word of mouth, like you mentioned, is really important. Online review. So this is what we call the reputational promise, right? That the experience will be good. And that's when basically you really need to ensure that the first interaction is really going to create that really positive memories with the brand.
Yeah, right.
So if we move down a little bit on the other findings that we have in this study, the other interesting point was, again, something that has been discussed for a very long time in the CX committee
Yeah,
was around how, customers are willing to pay more. And in this study, we managed to understand that actually just a little under 50% of customers say that they're actually willing to pay more for a good experience. And
yeah,
again, that's a really strong validation for all CX practitioners, but also for companies that investing into CX that has an impact on the bottom line.
yeah. This is a bit more striking, actually. Nearly half of the customers says they're willing to pay more for better experiences. But I'm thinking, should we take this as a clear signal that brands must invest in CX
Mm.
because it drives loyalty, retention, and of course, customer lifetime value? But that earning in higher price point only happens if the experience is consistently perceived as worth the premium. How do you see this balance?
Yeah, so again, like I was saying, this is really one of the most critical validation we had in this study, and again, for all business leaders. So the fact that, again, just below 50% of customers are willing to pay more is really a clear direct mandate
Yeah,
to invest in CX.
indeed.
So, it's really a strong signals, I would say, that CX is not a cost center like many leadership teams believe, but it's actually a direct contributor and direct drivers of revenue and profitability. However, we also need to acknowledge that it's not just a blank check that customer are giving you, right?
Right.
It's conditional,
Yeah,
and it must be
exactly.
earned,
Yeah,
right? So I would say customers are willing to pay a premium if they know that you are consistently going to deliver an experience that is worth to them. You can't charge a premium if you are just merely delivering a functional experience, or at worst, actually, you have a broken experience. So you really need to ensure that you deliver on the basic, you have that consistency across all the journey that the customer is experiencing with your brand. And from there, basically, you can differentiate and elevate the experience that you deliver, through very personalized experience or by anticipating customer needs. And that will help you build that emotional connection with your customers that therefore will link to their willingness to pay more for the product or services that you are delivering because that's delivering a premium experience for them.
yeah. And the brands should try to understand the, connection between them, in their own practice, right? That's actually the main idea of building a CX strategy. They need to understand their
Exactly.
customers, and then they need to understand the connection between the pricing and the positioning and, functional, experiences to emotional attachments as well.
Yeah, exactly. And just to touch on that, having a clear understanding through your voice of customer programs, to the study that you do to really capture that feedback from customer. That's exactly what you need to understand by connecting the different data set that you have to really highlight where exactly your customer segments or different
Mm.
persona are actually expecting from you, whether it's on product, like you say, on price, whether it's on the
Yes,
delivery of the experience and so on. And that's extremely important.
perfect.
Um, Moving on to, again, the next two are, again, very striking for us because we talk a lot about AI, and something that we really wanted to understand is what the customer perception around AI and, how do they think they are going to benefit from it. And Interestingly, 4 in 10 customers actually say that they believe that companies actually will benefit more
Very
about AI than them. And on the other side, we have another number which, again, balance that is to say that only 14% of customers
good.
actually believe that they are going as customer going to benefit most from AI. So we see
Yeah.
that gap between, perception on AI is actually probably going to benefit more to the company than it's going to benefit to the customers at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this gap actually, especially considering the ongoing tension between personalization and automation.
Yeah,
Customers want relevance, but they don't want to feel over automated or lose the human touch, right? Do you see this
exactly.
conflict contributing to the perception gap?
No, yeah, exactly. I mean, this is right now probably the number one tension in the market
Yeah,
for brands.
I
So
agree.
we see that again, the perception that I just described is actually fueling the conflict between personalization and automation.
Yes,
And we see a lot of company, like we say, they are in between two chairs and don't know which direction or which chair they should be choosing. Um,
exactly.
One thing we need to understand is that as customer, we are really incredibly perceptive, right? So when we see a chatbot, for example, or automated system, we usually immediately understand and recognize that the goal for companies to invest into such technology is actually to reduce cost of serving, right?
Right.
As customer, but also to increase their efficiency. And
Yeah.
when that automation of that process, leads to what we can call, the frustration loop, because the information you receive are incorrect or not accurate, and you don't have the ability to actually reach a human being to actually answer your question, your needs, that's reinforced the belief that AI, the AI tool that the company are deploying actually in their benefit, but not in yours, because it's actually adding that level of frustration. But on the other hand, if we look, at AI used effectively, for example, for
Yeah.
personalization, it can actually really delight customers. So if you think of, for example, some of the famous streaming services that recommend, the perfect movie that you want on a Friday night, or online retailer that push to you, recommendation on product that you didn't even know you needed. That's really adding value to you. So that's where you see
Yeah.
AI as a true added services to you. So this is something as CX practitioner, we really need to watch out, because it's a big warning, is to ensure that whatever investment and strategy we push around AI is really with the customer first mindset. Are we adding value to customers, or are we going to add actually frustration and friction in the journey and the interaction they have with us?
Yeah, and I think we will see, many other, applications coming from AI in the future. So quite excited. We are just, trying to
Yeah,
understand how it's going to evolve, right?
exactly. I mean, we're just at the beginning, so will be
Yeah.
very interesting to see how things unpack, you're right, in the next couple of months and years. Um, so those was really some of the key highlights we had. One also deep dive we did that is very important to us and very important to a lot of brands outside is actually how do you actually leverage and create that emotional connection, emotional attachment with customers. And one of the, again, validation we did through these studies, understanding how emotional attachment is linked to some of the KPI used in CX, but also to the CLV that most companies try to track. And as you can see, is what we call emotionally engaged customer, emotionally attached customer, have a much stronger performance on all those KPIs, whether it's NPS, satisfaction, or retention. So what does it tell you as a brand is that if you manage and if you invest in creating that emotional connection with your customer, it's going to pay off. It's going to pay off in terms of the fact that they're going to and to talk positively about your brand to others. That of course they are satisfied, therefore the chance for them to spend more with you is much higher, as we know. And of course,
Yeah.
retention, the chance for them to churn is much smaller than just functionally satisfied customers.
Yeah, in the slides, actually, I like looking at the numbers, of course. I have several notes to myself, but I think, the most important one of my notes is, the metrics reinforce that satisfaction alone, being functionally satisfied, for example,
Mm.
right, doesn't guarantee advocacy or loyalty, looking at the numbers. emotional connection is what lifts NPS, retention, and satisfaction scores to a much higher level. Is that correct? This is what I read from the numbers.
Yeah, no, you're completely correct. And basically, in a nutshell, so satisfaction is no longer enough, right?
Yeah.
If you look at recommendation, it leaps from, a modest plus 31 for functionally satisfied customer to really a strong plus 67 for emotionally attached customers. So it's really show that while,
Yeah.
functionally satisfied might prevent customer from complaining, emotional connection is actually what turned them into really active advocate to your brands, and that's what you want as a brand. So this also, there is also a nuance that is often overlooked is that we also have unfulfilled customers that basically, as you see, perform very poorly. But they also need to have a special, I would say sales practitioner need to have a special look at this customer because while they might not make noise and they might not, complain too much, there's also a very high risk of them churning. So in a nutshell is while, yes, you definitely want to engage and to make sure that you invest into creating that emotional connection, you also can't ignore the pool of customer at the bottom because those are definitely very high risk churn customers for you.
Very interesting. Yeah.
The other interesting point we wanted to look at is how do different industry perform in terms of emotional attachment? And I know that you probably receive the same requests from customers around, hey, can you benchmark us around, how other industry are performing or the client? And what really strike us here is that, to be honest, we were a bit surprised by how some of these industry are actually ranking. So you can see here that airline and automotive are actually the industry that performed the best when it comes to emotional attachment. And on the other hand, you have internet service provider and utilities that are at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, there is a significant, differences between the industries, checking the numbers. But I think it's also in their nature. I see so, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you're right. Airline and automotive, there's definitely a
Yeah,
level of emotional attachment because,
right.
again, when you took up airline, you associate that potentially with holidays, family, sometimes with business trip. Automotive, same thing, right? Is a very big investment in your life. Cars being really expensive nowadays. While internet service providing and utilities, you tend to be a service that is there, but you don't really focus on unless you have a problem, unless your internet stopped working or you have basically an outage in terms of electricity. If not, it's there, but you don't really pay any attention to it. So you're
Or
right. There
you,
is a
yeah.
definitely different level of engagement with this
Or
industry.
you barely, build a emotional connection with your internet service provider, for example, right? It's not very common, actually.
Is not, and that's also one of the difficulty for these brands is to say,
Yes.
how do I actually can, even though it's not easy for me, but I still need to be able to engage with my customer and to have that level of connection because ultimately that's what is important when it comes to differentiation between provider, between brands, right? Service being pretty close to each other. How do I actually create that emotional connection is really a challenge, but it needs to be done, and there's ways to do it even for them. We're going to see that. Just moving on to what I was saying is that's great. So, we share with you some of the insights, some of the highlights, but how do you actually succeed in CX? What's as brand, what as customers you should really be looking at? And the first thing, which again, we wanted to share with all of you is to say that if you look globally on how CX, the state of CX, well, it's okay. You have 51% of customers that say overall experience that are being delivered are good. But you also have therefore 49% of customers that are saying, well, it's actually poor or it's actually nothing really notable. So the potential for improvement is actually pretty important, or it's pretty high. So there's still a lot of effort that can be made to really reach that level where we will have potentially 70-80% of customers that say, yeah, I'm really happy with most of the experience that are being delivered to me on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
The other thing that is very important to acknowledge is that there is building blocks when it comes to creating and focusing on CX strategy that you mentioned earlier. And for us, there is two key elements that, again, appear really strongly. One is what we mentioned earlier around the emotional engagement and what we call the emotional factors. And there is six that we identified. And you have the experience factors. And those experience factors are employee ESG, the delivery of the experience, the omni-channel, personalization, which is a massive topic, and the brand promise. How do you actually deliver on it? And the key here is how do you actually align your emotional factors to the experience factors to ensure that you deliver the right emotion at during all these different experience that customer have with you. And that's something that again we have additional details and information about.
Yeah, employees remain a core building block of CX success. We see this, since years actually. Do you see that employee experience management here can change the game?
No, yeah, I mean, for me, it's actually the most important building block. And again, there's a lot of conversation around aligning CX and EX. It's not many brands have managed to actually crack it, to really build an EX CX ecosystem that's really leverage and I would say help each other. So in my view, you really cannot be great in customer experience if you don't have engaged, empowered, and well-supported employees. I mean, your frontline, they are your brand. They are the one that interact with your customer and basically display your brand on a daily basis. So if your employee basically feels valued, if they have the right tools, if they are empowered to solve problems, when they interact with customers, they will naturally, feel happy and they feel more positive, and therefore they will transmit that during the interaction with customer. But on the contrary, if they are not well equipped, if they are not happy, then that frustration will be also therefore transmitted to customers. So it's really important to ensure that you do, while you understand your customer needs and expectation, you also do the same with your employee, and you invest in EX as you invest in CX, whether it's training tools to ensure that basically that delivery of experience can be done as it should be at the front line.
Exactly.
If I move to one of my last slides, it's really, again, understanding if you look at the different industry and how those industry perform in terms of recommendation advocacy versus how do they perform from an emotional connection. Again, you see that you have some that are performing really well, automotive being the strongest, followed by retailers. And on the other side, as previously I mentioned, we have industry like internet service provider and utilities. So that, again, doesn't mean that they can't be performing well. It just means that they need extra effort to be able to perform as well as some of the other industry.
Yeah, this is also answering my question to the previous slide. Actually, this variation across industries, this graph shows us that experience factors explain why some sectors lag behind on advocacy despite meeting functional needs, right? Can we see this, from this perspective?
No, yeah, I mean, you're right. The variation around across the different industry show that, yeah, there is lag on advocacy, right? But while the basic functional needs, are met, poor performance on the emotional attachment on the forces of CX that we have listed here, they will hold you back from a recommendation score perspective. So doesn't mean, again, like I was saying, if you are an internet service provider or utility provider, which again is listed at the bottom here, you are probably delivering on those functional elements. You are delivering what customers have signed a contract you for, but you probably are failing at delivering on those experiential factors like fair treatment, control, or personalization. So again, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Just need that you need to make extra effort because, like we were discussing earlier, you are basically delivering a service or product that is not really necessarily noticed by customers unless there is really something really great happening or something really bad happening. And that will therefore need you to have extra engagement with them and different ways of actually creating that emotional connection.
Yes, exactly. And I also see that it's noteworthy that even industries with historically low emotional connection, as mentioned before, still see gains in recommendation when CX forces are strong, right? Meaning these levers are universal drivers of customer outcomes. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, yeah, exactly. So they are definitely universal drivers because no matter what you sell, right? Whether you are selling, a car, bank accounts, whether you are selling an internet connection, if you
Yeah.
manage to perform better on these core emotional forces, that will lead to a stronger advocacy. So, like again, if you are historically an industry that is stuck because you have low emotional connection with your customers, um, basically what we are trying to say is don't worry, you are not doomed, right? It's not the end of the world for you. There is still light here out there. If you systematically focus on improving, things like certainty, control, fair treatment, then you will see therefore an increase into your recommendation and advocacy, along the way. So just continue and just carry on. It's going to pay off.
Exactly, yes.
Um, in conclusion, basically, there's a couple of message we wanted to for you to go with. This one is delivering a better experience will make your customer choose your brand and therefore so be willing to pay more for your product and services. So again, focusing on emotional engagement is extremely important. The other thing is like while metrics such as NPS and customer satisfaction are strong indicator of your performance, we also through this report clearly reinforce the importance of emotional attachment as an indicator that most brands should also monitor and invest on. We also identify that there is a key experiential and emotional building blocks. You mentioned about employee and there is
Right.
five others that you need to be able to acknowledge. Overall, also we see that the CX market, the CX ecosystem is really driven by how do you perform from an hygiene factor perspective, but also how do you actually perform on those emotional factors that are extremely important. They will vary depending on the industry and the service and the product you are selling, but they are extremely important and you need to understand them. And what sets the best from the worst performing industry and brand is really the ability to actually elevate the experience that you deliver and really go beyond what the mass is doing and what the functional experience is. So you need to understand how can you go beyond that and differentiate yourself by delivering those emotional connection with your customers.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you so much, Stefan. Your insights have given us a lot to reflect on. It's always inspiring to see data translated into clear priorities that CX leaders can act on actually. So that's why it was a very valuable report for the market, I'm sure. And on behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing your time, your experience, and this valuable research with us today, of course.
Thanks a lot. It was really great to be with you and happy to chat anytime. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stefan. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for joining our first session. We are just getting started. Our next session is going to be a learning from each other. Cosnova's D2C CX journey will be live later today. Until then, wishing you all a wonderful CX day and see you soon in the next session. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.